Hello class, what I'd like to do today is go over with you problem 315 in your book, but before I do that, real quickly, I want to point you to page 63 through 65. I think that will help explain some of the processing in government accounting. We have budgetary accounts, which we will do journal entries for first, which are your estimated revenues, your appropriations, and your encumbrances. And then we also have our activity accounts, which are our actual revenues and expenditures. So you will be doing both of these in problem 315. The only thing I wanted to point out, and it talks about this on page 65, is that with the government, appropriations are an amount that is approved by law that allows the government the authority to spend the money. The encumbrance comes under appropriations. Encumbrances suggest that the government has an intent to use the resources for a designated purpose. And then basically from that you have your expenditures, which is when the government has actually incurred a liability and decides to use the encumbrance money as it has intended. So it's kind of a three-tier process with appropriations first, then your encumbrances, then your expenditures. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, let's go ahead and start working on this problem. In 315, we're looking at the city of Salem, and they're asking us basically to recreate what they've shown us, which a budgeted amounts are provided, and some actuals. You'll see we have an original budget, we have a final budget, which there are some differences. You may see a little bit additional information here because I've gone ahead and done a little work ahead of time to speed this up. But I'll discuss that with you as we go through the problem. You'll see the actual amounts. Those are what was actually spent, and then the variances with the final budget. Okay, so what we're going to begin with is we're going to move to the bottom here, and we're going to record the original budget. One thing to keep in mind as you're recording your budgetary amounts is that they work kind of opposite to what you're used to. So your revenues are your estimated revenues control for budget purposes is going to end up being a debit. So we're going to go up here and we're going to pick up what our total budgeted revenues are in the original budget. So you see original, that $37,238,000. That's what I've recorded here. I'm also going to record that amount, so I'm just going to reference it over here to my budgetary fund balance. Right now with the original budget, I'm just recording the initial amount, so I'm not going to use the estimated other financing uses yet. For subsidiary ledger, that's where I'm going to put the individual amounts. So you'll notice right here for my subsidiary ledger, I need to know what makes up that $37 million. So if I go up here and I look at where the revenue is coming from and I reference those cells, we're going to go up here and do that, but we're just going to copy them because there's multiple cells. Let's see, we expected to get revenues from the property taxes, the other local taxes, charges for services, intergovernmental, and miscellaneous. So I'm going to copy all those amounts, and I'm going to paste those right down here as a debit. Okay. And so you'll see right now we've done our budgeting entries for recording the original budget for revenue. So now we got to do the same thing on the expenditure side. So we want to pick up our appropriations. Okay, those are going to be what we think we're going to budget to spend. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to pick up my total expenditures in the original budget. See my expenditures, that $34,826,000. Okay. Here again, I'm going to leave the estimated other financing blank for the time being. Now I need to see where I'm planning to spend the money. You see on my appropriations ledger, let's go back up to the top. So we're going to go here that we plan to spend money for central general government, judicial administration, public works. You can see the detail here. The detail is going to go in my subsidiary ledger. So I'm going to record these, however, as credits, because we're going to record the actual expenditures as debits. Okay. So these are my credits right here for my $34 million. Then I also want to record any transfer outs or any transfer ins. Where I get that information from is you'll notice that we had budgeted revenues of $37 million. We had budgeted expenditures of $34 million, and we had an excess of $2,000,004 but we plan to transfer out $3,560,000. That $3,560,000 right here is going to be my transfer out. Now I'm going to go in and change the sign to that because I want it to read not as a negative. Okay, so we've now posted our $3,560,000. Because we actually do have a transfer out now, we are going to record that amount right here as part of my, as part of my budgetary fund balance, because that makes up what I plan to spend. So you'll notice now this number changed to $38 million because what I plan to spend and what I plan to transfer out equals that $38 million that I have here. Okay, now I've recorded the budget. Now I have to record any revisions to the budget. Alright, so this is the part that we're going to go down here and start with. In recording the budget revisions, we've got to go above and we've got to see where we have differences between the original and final budget. If you look up here, you have a difference in the original and final budget of $39,235. That amount I have right there references basically me looking at the difference between the original budget of $37,238,000 and the final budget of $37,277,000. If you'll notice, I'm revising my revenues upward. So because I'm revising my revenues upward, I'm going to make an entry for a debit because I'm increasing my revenues. So that is the entry that I made there. Here again, I'm going to change the signs because we don't want negatives in our journal entries. I also need to see now, have I had any changes? Let's look at the expenditure side. So we're going to go up to the expenditure side. And before I started recording this for you, I went ahead and looked at the differences in my expenditures. This is the original budget, $34,826. The final budget was $35,669. So if you look at my expenditures here, it looks like that I increased my expenditures for $842,711. So we're going to go ahead and increase our expenditures. It's an additional credit. I'm going to go pick up that amount that we've got, 842, and that's going to be that number there. And let's change the sign. And that's my 842,711. So now that we've recorded the changes that we had in our revenues and expenditures, see if we've got any changes also in our other financing sources or uses. So we'll go up there, look at the difference, and we find that we do have a difference here because our transfers to other funds, it was $3,560,000, now it's $3,257,000. So we have revised that down $303,000. So we're going to record that as a revision. And let's change the sign, which ends up giving me a budgetary fund balance of $500,476, which is the change from the original budget. Now we need to record the detail of where those items came from. Depending on debit and credit will depend on whether or not you revised it upwards or downwards. So let's go to the intergovernmental revenue account. And you'll notice here what this column is representing to you here is that when I looked at the changes between the original budget of $7,892,000 and the final budget of $8,047,000. You'll see I revised that upwards of $155,827, so that'll be an additional debit. But you'll notice when I get to miscellaneous of $116,592, I revised that downward, so that's going to be a credit. So there is my entry. Change the sign for my intergovernmental. And then I'm going to change the also for my miscellaneous. I told you it was going to be a credit because we revised that one downward. So we're going to show our credit here for our intergovernmental for $116,592. Okay. Let's look at our changes in our appropriations. We saw we had a total change up here of $842,711. So we want to pick up the details since there's a good many of them. Let's go up here and look at what we've got. Okay. So if we go up here in our changes, this column here is going to represent the changes between the original budget and the final budget. And you'll notice some of them were revised upwards and some of them were revised downward. Just to make it easier, I'm going to copy them in this way, and I'm going to copy them in as a debit, just because then if it's in a negative sign, then I'll move it to the credit column, because in this case you revise general government downwards 77,968, so that would be a debit. If you revised it upwards, it would be a credit. So judicial administration was revised upwards, so that's going to give me a credit in the subsidiary ledger. So we're going to copy all these amounts. One thing you want to do here when you get ready to paste these, because these were actual formulas that I created, anytime you're copying formulas and you really want the numbers and not the formulas, you want to do a paste special. So if you right click, get here and right click, do paste special and tell them you want to paste values. Okay, then you paste the actual values rather than pasting the formulas. So any of these that are negatives, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them over here, and I'm going to delete them from this column. Same thing with these two. Let's copy these, and I'll move them over here, and we're going to delete them. Okay. So the only thing you want to do here again is go in and change the sign on these, because we don't want negatives. So we'll go and do that, and I'll let you go in and change those later on. Okay. Also, you want to record any changes to the transfer out, depending on whether you revised it upwards or downwards will be how you want to record the original budget. And we're going to go up here. It'll be a debit in this case because we revised it downward by the 303,000. Here again, anytime you have a negative in here, just change your signs. All right. So now we can record the actual revenues. We're going to go to the revenue column. Here again in the general ledger, you're going to pick up the actual revenues that we have, which was this 37,086. Okay. And you're going to show a debit to cash of the 37,086 also. Okay. Then you got to pick up where those individual amounts are, and you'll put them here. To save time, I'll let you go in and do that. Encumbrances, what you want to do for your encumbrances is you want to go up and pick up what your actual expenditures were. Now you get to use the debit for expenditures, which is more what you're used to. So we're going to go into what our total expenditures are right here, looking in this column, the actual amounts. Here's my total expenditures. So that's going to be my 34 million, and I'm just going to reference that to my budgetary fund balance. Then you want to pick up those actual amounts and post those likewise here to record the encumbrances. Okay, now that we've done the encumbrances, the last thing you want to do is record the actual expenditures and the encumbrances reversals. So here basically what you're doing is as you actually spend the money, you're going to go up here and you're going to reverse what you set up here. So it's just a reverse of what you did here. Okay. And we're just going to pick up that. Then there again, you list them out. Now what you want to do is you want to record the same thing as an actual expenditure, where you're debiting expenditure control and crediting accounts payable, just like we debited cash and credited revenue control on the other side. Okay. Now you need to go pick up the detail to put it in the subsidiary ledger. We'll just go ahead and do that for the actual. So let's go up real quickly, see the actual amounts that we spent. Here are actual expenditures. We're going to copy those amounts because we want to paste those in. Since we're going to do the expenditure side, that's where you're actually recording it like you're used to as a debit to the expenses, because the expenditure control will be the control account of all these individual amounts. And there's your 34,889. You would show in the encumbrances letter the same amount as credits. In closing, what we've done here today is basically we have recreated from the budget the actual reporting. So I hope that helps. Please email me if you have any further questions. Thank you.